Looks like we're live.
Okay.
Well,
Does someone want to go ahead and talk about, I guess, their kind of thoughts about the reading and what stood out to them?
I can go.
Okay.
So within the reading, I thought the most interesting, what I wrote about in my outline was mostly the different approaches to, it was on pages 13 through 23, the different approaches to being a family life educator. And at the end of that, it asked, like, which one would you mostly like to emulate? And so as I was reading them, though, I was kind of thinking about the positive aspects of each of them. When it was talking about the facilitator approach, it wasn't the one that I would choose, but I was thinking that it says that through that one, they instead seek to help participants gain access to the knowledge they already have within them. And then it kind of is that the right one? Yeah. Oh, no. The expert approach is what I'm meant to talk about. Is saying that the education produced a person who is literate in the broadest sense, intellectually, morally, spiritually, and aesthetically. And so I was thinking that, that's a positive thing to have a lot of knowledge and to share it. However, I think that there should be a balance when you're trying to educate people. You share your experience or your knowledge, and then allowing the audience to share their experience with it. And as I kept on reading, there was one like that. I think it was the collaborator approach, saying that research-based principles to the learning environment, and the participants bring their own lived experience regarding these principles. So that's what stood out to me most from the reading, is the different types of approaches you can take. I didn't realize that there are that many different approaches to teaching about the family, but I think it's especially important to understand that because the family is such a delicate topic in the world. Yeah. And understanding, okay, I'm gonna share with them the knowledge that I have and maybe add some experience, but then I'll let them also add their experience so that they can, as it said later in the reading, learning for living or something like that, so that they can apply it to their own life. So it's not just me spitting out all this knowledge that I have, but so that they can apply it to them.
Was there one that specifically appealed to you, or that you think you're going to kind of do your workshop from, or I don't know if you're doing the family education or?
Yeah, I'm doing the workshop, and I think that I'll mostly do the collaborator approach of just sharing allowing their experience to be shared too. So it's kind of like a discussion, but also that it's like a learning circle in a way. So it's not just me being, you know what I mean? Not just me spitting out with information.
Yeah. Okay.
So I agree with that. I put down that I would like the collaborator approach the best. That's probably what I'll do. But does it kind of remind you guys of our lessons at church? You know how they've changed it? So it's not so much just someone standing up there reading the material. Now it's more like a discussion. So I think we all learn better when it's a discussion, because everyone has different life experiences. So, and I know I'm doing the workshop and sort of gearing it towards parenting, and everyone has experience in some way or the other with parenting. So I just think it's a better way to learn with that approach.
So mine, I probably will tend to be more towards like the interventionalist, that like you're seeking to like give people information so that they're able to make a change. And so I think that that doesn't lend itself as well to collaboration. I think that probably there needs to be more information presented, and then opportunities to kind of digest that and work with it within the workshop. I don't know. That's kind of what I was thinking. I'm doing more of a married, like a couple conflict management kind of a thing. And so I thought that would probably work better. But I thought it was interesting how how we have like the BYU learning model and how it kind of incorporates a little bit of all of these things. That was just, anyway, it just kind of stood out to me.
And I did like how the interventionist that you're talking about was kind of learning for living and not just knowing what it is, but learning to live it. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of late to the party because I guess I was the only one in the class that wanted to do the family one. Mm-hmm. And there was no partners for me. And they wouldn't let me do without a partner. So the teacher was trying to find me a partner in a different class, but there was nobody left out there either. So I'm just kind of starting this week on this whole class now.
Yeah, goodness.
They made me switch over to do workshop since I couldn't do it they wouldn't let me do the family stuff on my own.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to figure out the whole workshop I want to do. So I'm just kind of now trying to wrap my head around workshop since I really wanted to do the family stuff, but oh well.
So in your thinking process on thinking what you would do your workshop about, how did that process go? Like I don't know. I had to think about it a lot and think about more what I felt. I don't know. It was one of those things where I just kept praying about it and kept thinking, please let the thing that I'm supposed to talk about just stick in my mind and not let me wander from subject to subject. Did anyone else kind of feel that same way?
I did, and I kind of feel like, well, if I really, really, the whole time I knew about this class, I really wanted to do the family way because that's kind of what I want to do with my career. Mm-hmm. So I thought, okay, obviously if I'm the only person in the entire class of 23 people, plus then there's nobody left over in any other class, I'm obviously supposed to do this for a reason, right? So that's what I'm praying, like, what am I supposed to do with this? And I'm all by myself now because there's nobody left without partners and, and there's nobody that I pair up with that even looks remotely interesting or that, like, their schedules match or anything. So what am I supposed to do? And the only thing that keeps coming to mind are teenagers and kind of learning to adult. And now as I'm kind of talking to teens in my life, because I've got teenagers now starting to go into college and a whole bunch of teens in my life that, like, my best friend just died and she's got all these teens that now are trying to, like, learn to adult without a mom. And I've got, all their friends that are learning, and I've got all these teens that are learning to adult, and they're just kind of everywhere in my life. And I'm like, oh, this is what I need to do. So now all of a sudden in my face are all these teens that are, like, learning to adult, and they've got all these different questions for me. So now I'm just trying to pick through and decide, this is a lot of information. How am I going to figure out now which direction to go? Because they've got so many different questions from, like, insurance and relationship questions and there's so many questions they have for me. I don't even know where to go with the questions they have. So I almost have too much information now. So that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Okay.
I'm taking a child development class on adolescence right now. And that's sort of the big topic that we've learned about is emerging adulthood, when they don't really know what they should be doing. They're adults, but they don't know quite what to do. And I think some teenagers get kind of stuck, or 18 plus get stuck in that phase where they just don't want to become an adult. They don't want to get married, that kind of stuff. And also, like what you're talking about, some life skills for them. How do they get insurance? How do they, do this? How do they get an apartment? So, yeah, that's a good topic.
Mm-hmm. Like, the only utility they think they need is Wi-Fi.
Right.
Like, well, there's a few more utilities you're going to need when you get an apartment.
Who needs water?
Uh-huh.
Yes, that's funny. Well, you don't think about those things until you have to. Mm-hmm. Yes. Anyway, one of the other things that kind of stood out to me was in the in the history part of it, when it was talking about that, and it was talking about how they seek to offer family support, and it was talking about looking at the health and well-being of families, looking at parents' capability to raise their children and parent their children evaluating social support networks, empowering families to advocate on their own behalf. And that just, to my mind, that was just like the perfect encapsulation of like why we're doing this degree, or, you know, what should be maybe our career goal kind of a thing. And I think, you know, that just put it in a nutshell right there. And so that kind of helped, I think, clarify for me how I want to go forward, and what things I want to think about as I, you know, make choices for the future, which is something that, you know, I'm almost done, and thinking about, you know, what I want to do going forward. And so that was a help for me to kind of have that little synopsis or kind of clarification of what things to focus on.
That's good.
Yeah, I think another thing that I saw in the reading that was kind of a cool, I don't know, synopsis of why we do what we do kind of was a quote. It said, family life educators must be clear about what they want to accomplish and why, so that appropriate goals and objectives can be created. Preceding goals and objectives are a sense of vision and mission. So I like what was said earlier about how, I don't know, I don't think that any of us want to just teach this workshop for nobody to learn anything. You know, we want people to come out of the workshop having learned something and apply it to their own life. So it's just kind of interesting to me to see that how it said that we have goals and we have a mission and we have a vision before we do this. And I think it applies to not just this workshop, but everything we do in life, so that, you know, we have this kind of plan written out so that we can help those people without really knowing exactly what to say to individuals, but to a group of people. I hope that made sense.
Yeah. I think too, if you think about it like that, and you're thinking about it as you know, like people have a mission statement, or they have like a plan or a goal, like you were saying, that there's so much information out there for your teens, like that goal or mission statement kind of helps you focus that and kind of pair it into what you really want to say.
Didn't really do introductions, but I don't know I'm not sure who that koala is. You haven't really said anything. Is there anything you want to take a turn?
You know, every time you guys speak, it's exactly what I would say, so that's why I'm staying quiet.
So Elsie, was there anything that like really spoke to you and that you kind of made a note on, or that really stood out to you?
You know,
in the reading?
It's really hard to pinpoint just one thing. I kind of come from a completely different background. So I was actually a corporate trainer. So I have been through the teaching aspect previously. So a lot of it was kind of a review. And then I also work intimately with the Head Start program within our community. So the family life education also I'm familiar with. So it was good to see those concepts that I've gone over, specifically mentioned, kind of like giving it a name, giving it actual points, so that I knew, oh yeah, we were doing that right, or we could have probably done that a little bit better. So I'm excited to have goals and something to work towards, so that I don't get off track, because like was previously said, there's so much information out there that for any of our topics, it's just narrowing it down to what we can focus on. As far as the type of training, I was looking more towards eclectic, so taking the best parts of each of those different categories. I really like the idea of asking those critical questions to help the participants think really, how can I apply this to myself? Kind of like we do in our discussions at church and during gospel principles and whatnot, so that it's not just sitting there listening to somebody talk, but you can actually apply it to what benefits you the most.
So I have a question for you, being a corporate trainer or a past corporate trainer and now working with Head Start. So what are some possible suggestions that you could give us that maybe on how to kind of tailor things to our group that we're thinking about? Do you have any good suggestions?
So the one thing that we always did was what we've been talking about in the reading is come up with the main objective. So you know not only what you're teaching, but the people you're teaching, what is their general knowledge level, so you don't speak down to them. You want to make sure that you're giving them something that will be beneficial for them. And so then once you've established that baseline, you give a brief introduction of the basics, but then go into the concepts that you're really trying to, and making sure that you outline those for the participants so they know what to expect, and then you stick to that as best as possible, but also allowing for growth. So if the conversation, if the lesson that you're doing, if the questions they're asking are leading you to the same topic but maybe a little bit broader, then you know that you have a group that you can expand more with, but keeping it still within the realm. So.
Okay. And I thought it was just a random other question, since, again, you were a trainer. So in the reading, it was talking about the, I forget what it's called, where the types of program that you were making, like if you were doing a universal or a, I don't know, oh, let's see, selective, universal, indicated. Okay, so in thinking about this, I was thinking, so if you were looking to do this on a larger scale, would you more likely develop a universal program and then based on kind of who you were collaborating with or what organization you were teaching to, tailor it to what their kind of what their audience would be? Is that kind of how you would do that?
Yeah, I think that that's a great point, that we want to, at least my approach is to try to come up with a broad, it sounds weird, a broad specific topic, and then and come up with what those points are, but then tailor it to who shows up that night.
Okay.
So if you, so that way it allows for growth. And I don't know about everyone else, but for me, I'm not going to be targeting only those people in my ward. Since I have those avenues, I can reach out to the community to offer that. So I'm not going to be starting with a word of prayer, but I'm going to I'm going to do a personal prayer and ask for the Spirit to be there to help guide me while I have an agenda, I'm still kind of opening it up to their questions. Yeah. And
you leave yourself some leeway to go where you need to go, I guess.
Right.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's helpful.
You're very welcome.
Super interesting.
So I like the point you made about, when you have an audience and not talking down to the audience. So I feel, because I've kind of been going in the direction of doing kind of a positive discipline workshop. And I just am fearful that I don't want to tell people they're doing things wrong. And so I'm trying to go around that and just give them new information or suggestions or something like that. So I think it's kind of I don't know, it seems like it might be a challenge for doing a workshop, a parenting workshop on discipline.
I think you're right. It's all in how you approach it. I know we have a program out here called Common Sense Parenting, and the one thing that I realized being a participant in it is that we already all were coming to that conference or that workshop because we have issues with parenting. And it was helpful to, instead of saying, the instructor telling us, oh, you're doing this wrong, take it to the different approach of just saying, here are some tips that I have for you. How would you use this if you were to adapt it? Instead of saying, giving us the assignment of implement this now, but giving us the option of discussing how we want to approach it, use those
Here
skills.
might be a better way that would work, or then you can get or leave it kind of a thing.
Yeah. I was talking to some of the gals I work with, and there's a young gal who has a 1-year-old. And I said, would you be interested in coming to a workshop that talked about discipline? And she said, oh, no, we've already decided how we're disciplining our children. So I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. She's a 1-year-old, and I mean, I have more than just one kid, and I know they're all a little different, at least how we discipline them. So I thought that made me think. I'm like, okay, I need to tailor this to people that have thought, okay, this is how I'm going to discipline, and just maybe give them, just open it up a little wider, like, okay, well, consider this, or I don't know. I'm still working on it. So
I would think
go ahead.
I would think your marketing, your target audience would probably be parents who have at least a 2-year-old or above, because by 2 years old, you realize that discipline plan that you once thought you had in place is probably not everything you need to know.
Right.
They get their own mind, and you can't bend them to your will anymore.
That whole agency thing.
Yeah.
Puts a damper on parenting.
Yeah. So I have another question for you, since you have community connections. So how would you suggest just kind of starting to establish those community connections for those of us who are, I mean, I volunteer at the Women's and Children's Alliance, but that doesn't really fit my population that I'm looking for, because most of those women are now either single or not married.
So for me, it was through my children and needing those services that I developed those connections. But I know a few months back, I had to try to find a volunteer program for our Relief Society. And I was amazed at just calling and saying, hey, how can I help you? Or who do I need to talk to figure out how I can help you? They were ecstatic. They're like, how? So I think it's just
putting yourself out there and doing it.
Right.
Okay.
And I don't know about the other states, but I know for us, we have the United Way that has like a catch-all where they have a list of all the different organizations that help for specific things. And so going through that list and figure out who would benefit, that would be one way. And then you could even ask them, hey, are there other organizations that you usually partner up with? How can I get a hold of them?
Okay, great. Thank you. That's a good resource to know about.
You're welcome. So looking at that second set of readings in lesson 2, do we know, as far as because we're not going to be able to do pilot testing and all that, has anybody kind of read ahead to find out how we're supposed to, if we're supposed to do anything specific as far as that area?
I think what she's going to have us do is do like a little pilot testing with our group. Like we teach just a small portion of it just to see. But that's kind of what I got from her, whatever recording I listened to or meeting that I went to. I can't remember which one it was, but did anyone else get that from?
It's vaguely familiar. something about kind of teaching our group. So.
Okay. Thank you.
I had a thought as well that I may try and just, grab a bunch of people that I know and see if I can test it out before I do the real thing, just to see. But.
Yep.
Yeah, I was hoping to teach my kids and then, put the word out for other teenagers or something. That's my hope.
Invite your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone have
of my kids. Keep going.
Anyone have it for this future one? I liked the kind of little, I don't know, I'm having a hard time thinking about what to call this to make it sound like something you'd want to come to. Anyway, anyone else having issues like that? I mean, I know I can explain it, but to put a name to it is a little more difficult.
That last assignment took me way longer than it should have because I kept going back and changing my title of the workshop. I couldn't decide. I said, this isn't a big deal. I just leave it how it is and come back to it.
Yeah.
Change it later.
No, that was helpful because I thought, this isn't the final thing. We obviously know we're going to go back and rewrite and adjust. So that was helpful. It kind of relieved some of the pressure. But anyway. Well, is there anything else do you think that we need to cover, or I'm just trying to think about those questions that we needed to, some of the questions that we answered. Oh. What about, how are you guys going to do your, your identify your problem, and do your research? Are you guys going to do a little, I don't know what I want to call it, a annotated bibliography where you, not annotated bibliography, like a literature review where you just review all the different articles, pick and choose things out of the articles? How are you going to do that? I'm just trying to figure out how to organize myself so that I can make the best use of my time.
I'm still trying to figure my whole thing out. I'm a mess. I'm still trying to do last week's assignment on top of this week's assignment, so I'm still a disaster.
No, I was just gonna say, I think that's what I would do, is just go through the different articles, because see what types of things really match up to the workshop that I'm doing, and pick and choose the information. You know what I mean? That's a lot of work, but I don't know a different way to do it.
Yeah,
if anyone has a good idea. Yeah.
I was just thinking of doing it that way, doing a little write-up on each one, just so that I could keep them organized in my head, because eventually they all start, you've looked at so many that they start to blend.
Yeah.
Are you guys all doing your workshops alone, or are you with a partner?
I'm alone.
I'm alone.
I'm alone.
We're all alone.
That's so sad.
Well, good. At least we're all alone together, right?
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, I think we've covered everything, I hope. Anyway. So should we just go ahead and end?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay. All right. Well, it was nice to meet everyone, and I appreciate your input and your advice.
I have a question for you guys.
Sure.
Sort of just a homework question, but on your outlines, are they super long that you've been doing on the reading? I feel like mine's really long, and it's like we have to post them to the discussion board, which mine's 5 pages.
Well, according to instructions, it's supposed to be a page to a page and a half.
Mine isn't very long.
So I'm trying to condense mine as well to kind of
Well,
like the major things.
Okay, and are you finding a hard time bringing in your other things you've learned from your classes before? I know we're kind of supposed to do that. I'm trying to tie it in, but I feel like it's not, I don't have a lot of stuff to tie in.
I'm feeling the same way.
Okay. Okay, and I'm trying not to summarize the text, but there's points in the text that I want to remember, so I've been putting that stuff down and putting my little notes with it, but
yeah, I've just been kind of doing that as well. And then just maybe I kind of put the questions that we had to answer, kind of organize them in with it, and then also just some of my own thoughts about it. And I just put those in quotes underneath like the text that I wanted to remember. And so I thought that would be, that would be helpful to me just to know kind of what I was thinking at the time. Anyway, that's how I did it.
Well, and I asked her if we had to keep it at 1.5 pages, and she said that was the minimum. But I was like, what's the maximum? Because it's kind of too wordy, I guess.
You're rewriting the text. Anyway. It sounds like you're fine.
Is this supposed to be comprehensive of lessons 1, 2, and 3, or just 1 and 2, since we're in week 3?
I think just 1 and 2 is what I understood.
Oh, okay. Because I've been working on 3, week 3, week 2.
Yeah, me too.
So maybe I'll ask her.
Okay, because we had the 3 chapters, the 1, 2, and 18. Because remember in our little syllabus quiz that it asked us how many chapters we were going to be doing our discussion on. So I figured that was the 3 for this time, but I could be crazy.
Well, because week 3 reading kind of goes back into chapter 1 that we've already talked about, and it's asking again about like the different types of workshops to do. Anyways, it seemed like it kind of went over it again. So I thought,
I'm sure it's not going to hurt anything to have it.
Okay.
Well, it is, and then you did, because I liked Appendix A. Was that week 3?
That's week 3.
That was just the stories, but that was my favorite reading. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, and that. But then I didn't write a lot about that just because that was like personal stories, So I didn't like sit and write my own personal stories.
Okay.
All right.
So are you including it in the outline that's due tomorrow?
I didn't write a ton about Appendix A. I just wrote like a little blurb about, I think, just a few personal things on that. Because that was my favorite part, though, of the whole thing so far. That was like the most interesting part to me. Okay. But I think that wasn't part of the outline just because that was in chapter 3 and that's what I read this week. Okay. That was yesterday. All my days run together. That was what I read yesterday. So I did add it in, but I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think it's going to hurt anything to add it in, but I'm just going to shoot for the first little 3 that we've done. If I screw it up, I screw it up, I guess. But
yeah. Oh, well, yeah, because it all kind of is the same thing. Because it is. It referred back to certain pages that was in the first week or whatever. Anyway, so
yeah, yep.
Okay. So I think you're fine.
All right, ladies.
We should probably stop, huh?